Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay. Welcome. And today, Diane Elrod's back, and she's back.
She's back.
And this is the third time she's spoken. And let's see if I can get the name of her. Soka Gakkai, thank you, International, is the group that she represents, I guess. And she'll talk about the Nichiren tradition. I mean, I just butcher all these words. I'm sorry. She can correct it. And it's just a pleasure to have her back because she's very warm and personable. I mean, we meet out there like we're all friends. We've only met twice, and I really enjoyed having you here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
How many people have been here before when I've been here, brought people with me? Raise your hand. So I can tell a little bit about we can share a little bit about the background of the kind of Buddhism that we practice. This is my partner, Nancy Burns. And she was the one who introduced me to this practice, the practice of Nichiren Buddhism in 1994 when we first met. Just as a little bit of a background, Nichiren Buddhism comes from Japan. It was originated in 13th century Japan with a monk and scholar and reformationist, or whatever, if that's the right word, named Nichiren. And he basically kind of started studying all different kinds of Buddhisms and decided that actually the Lotus Sutra, which was one of the last, next to the last teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha, was the highest teaching, and it was something that he wanted to share with everybody in the land of Japan and as far away as possible. And his idea was that chanting the title of, he wasn't actually the first one who came up with this, but that chanting the title of the Lotus Sutra, Myoho Renge Kyo, plus Nam, which is the devotional before it, was really the key that allows anybody, regardless of their position in life, to become happy and reach enlightenment in this life. And in fact, I brought some material today that we can hand out at the end. We don't need to hand it out now. But the topic we're going to talk about a little bit today is called "What is Benefit?" And because I'll explain a little bit about that. But in here is one of Nichiren's writings. We're very fortunate to have many of his writings translated. In Japanese, I think there are a lot more translated than there are in English. But one is entitled, one of his most important works is called On Attaining Buddhahood in This Lifetime. And so anyway, he was really considered a heretic at the time because he refused the state religion. He really propounded a view that anybody, including women and criminals, any being had Buddha nature in it, and any being therefore could become enlightened. And that was kind of antithetical to what a lot of Buddhist sects were saying at the time, that women were not able to become enlightened. And so he took the Lotus Sutra and really shared it widely. And so it was a very difficult time for him, and he faced a lot of persecution at that time and was nearly killed a number of times. If you want to fast forward it was remained a relatively small sect of religion for a number of years. 700 and so years later, it kind of re-emerged in post-war Japan with a group of people who originally were all educators, who named their organization originally the Value Creation and Education Society, and I can't remember what it is in Japanese, and later was shortened to the Value Creation Society, which is Soka Gakkai. That's what Soka Gakkai means. And so this group of people, very small in the beginning in Japan, realized that this teaching was really universal. It wasn't really a religion in the sense that you worshiped something or someone, or you pay homage to a person, or in kind of the traditional sense, but it was a philosophy of life that everyone, could have access to. And so this is extremely brief, but between the post-war Japan and now, there are approximately 12 million members who practice this Buddhism in the Soka Gakkai, or the SGI, which is the international organization, throughout the world in 187 countries. So that's a very extremely brief explanation of kind of the origin of this Buddhism. I also wanted to say that the primary practice that we do is chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And although it's not really, it's really impossible to get a true understanding of what Nam-myoho Renge Kyo means unless you practice it, because of how it opens up your life in a way that you never thought imaginable. In sort of literal terms, Nam is a devotion or devoting to. Myoho is the mystic law. Renge is the lotus blossom, which seeds and blooms at the same time, which represents simultaneity of cause and effect. And Kyo, which means sutra literally, also means broader a teaching, sound vibration, or a collection of people who gather to do this together. So it's devoting your life to the law of cause and effect through sound vibration, which is one way of describing it. We also recite part of the Lotus Sutra in, do you have your book? Which is in two chapters of the Lotus Sutra, two small portions of the Lotus Sutra. We read out of this book. Many of you who have been here before have gotten this book or have seen it, which is a phonetic writing of the Lotus Sutra in Old Japanese. In fact, one of the questions often asked is, why don't we chant this in English? Why don't we recite this in English? Because, number one, we're chanting the same thing that Nichiren did in 13th century Japan, and also it connects us with everyone around the world, no matter who it is, that chants. We all chant the same thing. And so we can get together. Nancy and I went to France and couldn't communicate at all with the people there, except when we chanted together part of the Lotus Sutra where we were speaking the same language, and it's really quite profound. So we do that, and we also we have a mandala. We don't have icons of Buddha in our houses. Typically, we don't have an altar with a Buddha, because the idea of this practice is really that Buddhahood is inherent within ourselves, and when we chant to bring out something in ourselves, and we're not worshiping a deity or a person or any kind of thing outside of us. In fact, Nichiren, in one of his famous writings, said, never seek the Gohonzon, which is the law of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, outside of yourself. Specifically, the mandala, we have a mini version for those of you who haven't seen it. Most people, well, actually everyone who practices this Buddhism through the SGI has a scroll about so big in an altar that down the center of it, this is the traveling version for people who go traveling around and need a little Gohonzon or a mandala wherever they go. Down the middle of it is written Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And around the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo's characters down the middle are all different functions in life, both bad and good. Our teaching is really one that says it's impossible to rid oneself of negativity or anger or the dark forces or fundamental darkness or whatever you want to call it, but the process of awakening your Buddhahood is to overcome those negative tendencies, but they're part of life that can't be rid of because we're human beings. So here, you want to hold that for me for a minute? Thank you. Now, since we weren't sure whether you guys wanted us to chant a few minutes together, if you'd like, we could recite the sutra. We'll recite the sutra because you don't have the book, and then we chant a few minutes of Nam-myoho Renge Kyo if you'd like that. How many people would like that? Raise your hand. Okay, we can do that.
So can everyone say Nam-myoho Renge Kyo? Let's practice that once.
Nam-myoho Renge Kyo.
Nam-myoho
Renge Kyo. Gay is the good part.
So does everybody get that part? Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. It's done in 6 syllables.
We'll do it slow enough that you can follow along. You'll get the feel of it.
We do have an SGI member in our midst who
yes, back there.
Support too. And we chant we chant as much as possible as we can in front of the Gohonzon, but of course if you're in the car or you're, looking for a parking space in the Castro or whatever, you don't whip this out. It's with you all the time inside, but by having it as a mirror when we're in the environment, much as other icons of religious, spiritual significance bring out a certain element of our lives, the Gohonzon is activating our Buddha nature when we're chanting to it.
In fact, I learned how to chant really by chanting in the car because I commuted from here to San Jose every day, and I was kind of a closet chanter. I was kind of embarrassed at first, so I chanted in my car a lot. So it gave me a good practice. You want to do it? Why don't
I
just
chanted
leave
in
it
the bathroom in the beginning, and I lived alone, so that's. But my father was a Lutheran minister, and I just thought somebody out there knew I was chanting, and so I had to hide.
It's strange, Why don't we just leave it down there since the bell is there?
Okay, I can't get that low.
I can. The one thing I was going to say is, the original purpose for beads, various kinds of Buddhism, and in fact Catholicism came up with the same thing as a way of counting the number of times you repeat something. It's the same with this. We have prayer beads also. Ours have evolved over the years. We chant kind of symbolically. There are 3 little parts here representing the head, 2 arms, and down at the bottom 2 legs. So when we're chanting with a twist in the middle for a waist.
I wish.
Yeah, well, anyway. Kind of symbolically, we have our own lives in our hands. This is a Buddhism of absolute personal responsibility. So it's like, it just helps, I think, to also really focus our energy towards chanting. So do you want to sit in here and listen
And
to
this
this?
has the many, as she said, many religions have this, but the 104 beads that represent 104 human desires, and then the 4 smaller beads are the 4 bodhisattvas, I think, that help to transform our own desires to work for the best good of everything.
So you can leave. So we're going to recite. It takes about 2 minutes to recite the sutra part, which obviously you won't be able to follow along with, and then we'll chant a few minutes of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Myoho Renge Kyo, Benpan Daini, Niji Se Sanju San Mayan Chobiki Do Shari Hotsa Shobuchi E Jin Jin Muryo Gochi E Manange Nanyu Isa Shomon Yakoshi Putta Shobu No Ji Showi Shaga Putta Zo Chingan Yakasan Manakabushu Shobutta Jingo Shobutta Muryo Doho Yum Yo Shojin Yo Shofu Mancho Ju Jin Jin Mizo Uo Suigi Sho Tatui Shu Nange Shariata Doju Jobutta Irai Shuju Inen Shuju Hio Koen Gangyo Mushu Ho Beni No Shujo Rori Sho Jakasho Ishaga Nyorai Ho Ben Chiken Haramitsakai Gu Sakashariata Nyorai Chiken Godai Jinan Muryo Muge Rikimusho Isan Joge Lasan Ma Jinyu Musai Joju Isai Mizo Ho Shariata Nyorai No Shuju Pumbadi Yoshe Shoho Gonji Nunen Akashu Shariata Shuyo Gonchi Muryo Muhen Mizo Abu Shitajoju Shi Shariata Bushu Buseta Shoi Shaga Bushu Joju Dai Ichikeyu Nange Shi Hoi Butyo Butanai no Kujin Shoho Jizo Shoi Shoho Nyose So Nose Sho Nose Dai Nose Riki Nose Sa Nose In Nose En Nose Ga Nose Ho Nose Hanma Gu Yodo Shoi Shoho Nose So Nose Sho Nose Dai Nose Riki Nose Sa Nose In Nose En Nose Ga Nose Ho Nose Hanma Gu Yodo Shoi Shoho Nose So Nose Sho Nose Dai Nose Riki Nose Sa Nose In Nose En Nose Ga Nose Ho Nose Hanma Gu Yodo Myoho Renge Kyo, Nyorai Juryo Handai Jurubu Jiga Tukaburai Shoka Shoka Shomuryo Yakasan yo but the near I yo go edo shu jo go ben gen ne han ni to the dojo ju shi sa po ga jo ju o shi I shou chen se riki ro ten no chu no sui ga ni bu gen chu ken ga met do go ku yo shari gen ga ye ren bo ni shou bet go shin chu jo ki shin do chi chi ki do na ni shin yo gan but the bu ji sha shin yo ji ga gi shu so ko shi yo ju sen ga ji go shu jo jo zai shi bu met ri ho ben ri go ken but yo go bu shu jo go yo shin go sha ga bu o hi chu I sa ta mo jo ho yo do fu man chi ta ni ga met do ga ken cho shu jo mo ta zai yo gu ga go fu I gen shin go go so get to go in go shin ren lo nai to do I sa ba jen zo ri yo say oh also he go jo sorry yo ju zen go yo shou ju jo ju jo ken go ji dai go shou jo ji ga chi do an an te ni jo ju man an mi shou jo ga shu ju ho shou ga no tu ta ke ga shu jo shu yu ra ga shou ten ya ga ten go jo sa shu gi ga ga u man da ra ge sam ba de ge ya shu ga jo do fu gi ni shu gen jo ji no fu shou go no no say shu ju jo man say shou sa ju do I ya ga go in and ka a so gi go fu man sam bo myo shu shu go to you wa shi ji gi sha so ga gen gai shi zai shi ni sa ba ba ga ji e shi shu sa ta ba ta je ma ri yo ku nai gen bu sha I sa ta ba ta nan ji ga ji ri gi no say ya go shu ma ri yo jum yo bu shu go shu go shu ga ga no to u ji sha mo do shi shou gi ho nam ro yo ji ba ta go ji bu go no I sa no ben I ji yo shi go ji ji zai ni gan shi mu no say go mo ga ya go I se bu ku shou ku gen sha I ban bu ten do ji ji zai ni gan me to I jo ken ga go ni shou go shi shin ho it's a ja ga go ya ga da o a ga do shu ga jo shi shu do gyo do fu gyo do sui yo shou ga do I se shu ju ho my Jesus and any ga yo shu do shou go ju mo cho do so ga jo ju bu shi nam yo ho renge kyo 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 yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo nam yo ho renge kyo yo ho renge kyo nam 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 yo ho renge kyo. Thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to share with you today was, after the last time I came, which I can't believe it, I think it was more than a year ago. Is that possible? Seems like. I think it was like a week after the September 11th attacks, I recall. And I had received an email, I think through Clint, from maybe it was one of you, who asked a really good question about something that I had said that they wanted me to clarify. So I thought I'd take a little bit of time to explain it, because it's one of the things about which there's the most, I think, misunderstanding about the SGI and what we practice for, and what we chant about, if you will. One of the basic and most fundamental things about our organization is that we believe that when people are happy, and eternally happy, that is when they've activated the Buddha nature within, as a human being in this life, then the need to hate others, to find difference more important than commonalities, those kinds of negative aspects will go away. And ultimately we feel that when people take responsibility for their own lives and to become happy, then world peace is possible. So we have it's a phrase called Kosen Rufu, which is a Japanese term that means, it's actually kind of a compilation of things, but ultimately the meaning of it is to share Buddhistic, if you will, principles to people. Not to say that we want everybody to practice our kind of Buddhism, but that when Buddhistic principles of the deep importance and sanctity of human life, of life in general, is spread among people, then the likelihood of war starts to diminish. But in order to do that, what does it mean for us to become personally happy? And most of us come to this practice, I think, to learn how to chant. They start chanting about something that they want, either that they're a failed relationship, something that they feel that they want they can't have, a health problem perhaps. And so on the surface it may seem as though we're very materialistic people, and this has been sometimes, I think, the kind of stereotype of the SGI member is that we chant for cars. In fact, there are a lot of, you laugh, I was reading the website, Tricycle Magazine, to see what they had to say about Nichiren Buddhism. It's kind of a well-kept secret. I don't know how it is that more people don't know who we are, but be that as it may. And a lot of the information was pretty negative, and it was about, well, they're materialistic people and they chant for things like cars and parking spaces. I admit I do chant to get a parking space. And it works. But the idea... Right there, then. Sorry? You got a convert right That's there. Right, all right. In San Francisco anyway. Yeah. But the question that was posed to me a few months ago was a confusion over, the idea of what is benefit. What is it you mean? Are you chanting to get stuff? And I think that the easiest way to explain this is there are two kinds of benefits when one practices Buddhism. One is the conspicuous benefits, and those are the things like the car, the house, the job, the relationship, overcoming health problems, those kinds of things can be quite conspicuous. I mean, they're very obvious and they're like really fantastic things. But the deeper, most important kind of benefit that we receive by practicing Buddhism is the inconspicuous benefits. And these are things that build what we call real fortune, and are things like a strong sense of self, a sense of purpose in life, overcoming a personality problem or a difficulty that you've always faced that you felt as, quote unquote, your karma, meaning you can't get rid of it. Certain kinds of health issues that are seemingly unfixable by regular medicine. These are the kinds of things that are kind of longer lasting, and sometimes we don't even recognize that they happen until well after the fact. And the example I had used last time was when I first started chanting, Nancy encouraged me to chant about anything. And the first thing that comes to everyone's mind is something. It isn't necessarily, I want to overcome my negativity. That was not the first thing I chanted about. It was to get a house here in the city, for us to buy a house in the Castro, which we couldn't afford. And she said, well, you chant about that. And I said, okay, and I'll chant to prove that it's wrong, that it doesn't work. Because we're not going to get this house. It's way out of our league. We can't do it. We can't afford it. And in the end, it's true that chanting in theory, gave me this great conspicuous benefit of we realized this house. But the truth is what changed in me. A lot of the things that we feel we can't have or do or change about ourselves, we have made a limit on it for whatever reasons. We've decided that for whatever reason we can't have, do, or change this thing. And the overcoming part for me was overcoming my own internal negativity towards having something that I wanted. And that the obstacle I faced was really my own negativity. It wasn't really the environment out there. We feel as though with chanting, anything is possible. So what changed in me was I recognized that I had always, I stopped going after my dreams because I figured it was never going to be possible to have them. And I'd always give up. So the inconspicuous benefit for me was realizing I didn't have to give anything up. And that things that I want, it was okay to want something, and it was okay to never give up. And in fact, to me, it has led to me never giving up on all sorts of things that I thought was impossible. So the question that was posed to me about, chanting for a house was, yes, on the surface, chanting helped me materialize this house. But the deeper benefit was something, I think, more profound and more unusual in any other kind of practice, I'll say, that I have practiced. I'm not saying that other people haven't had the same kinds of experiences, but for me, this was the way to unlock a potential in me that I had never known I had. So in this sense, we talk about benefits, the sort of conspicuous benefits, the things we chant about as expedient means to these deeper benefits, the change, the internal change that help us become happier. And I wanted to, is it okay if you want to say a few things now? My partner Nancy, who introduced me to the practice, I think will share a little bit about some benefits, a recent benefit.
Well, okay, I know what she wants me to talk about, but
she won't talk about it.
What I wanted to say,
because she's like that.
We're married, so. By the way, we were married in the SGI 7 years ago this past Monday.
Yes.
SGI is one of the two major world religions that will honor same-sex unions. So, and they don't even publish it that much, but it is available. So,
what's the other one?
What is the other one?
It's, I can't remember. It is a branch. It's some Protestant branch in Europe somewhere.
When I say there are individual churches who will do same-sex weddings, but in terms of a sanctioned
religious organization
by the actual organization, I was surprised because I can think of a lot of places that do weddings, but those are individual branches of, like, the Episcopal Church does not condone same-sex weddings, but there are Episcopal churches that will do them. So, let's see, what do I want to say? Oh, a couple things I wanted to say that she touched on. One is this idea of karma. And what I had always understood, and Nichiren Daishonin writes about this too, is that there was always two layers of karma. One was mutable and one was immutable. And the mutable karma was something you could change through your own efforts. So by studying, by practicing Buddhism, by bettering yourself, in modern day terms it might be considered something you could cure in therapy, or something you could cure in a 12-step program, or something that through your own deep efforts you could change something, the course of your life, the direction it was going in. But then there's this other layer called immutable karma. And that might be something like, well, I'm gay, or I'm a woman, or I'm black, or I have AIDS, or I have a disability, or I have problem, I have ADD, or I have something that, well, maybe that is considered immutable, because things change. I mean, in society at one point, if you had certain diseases, that was considered immutable and you were going to die. And then cures were found. So then that moved up a layer. So what I was interested in when I started practicing this Buddhism is that Nichiren Daishonin says that basically through Buddhism there is no immutable karma. That even our deepest traits can work for our own happiness. And that's how you can change something around. And a good example might be, many of us may have suffered some sort of abuse in our lifetime, either doled out from parents or some other part of society. And maybe up to a certain point in our lives, we carried that wound around and said, I'll never be able to do such and such because of this thing that happened to me. Does anybody else share that? Ever have that limitation that you put on yourself? And then, suddenly you get into your 30s or 40s, or you meet someone and fall in love, or you started practicing Buddhism, or some other event happens, and you find that wound can somehow start to heal. And so it becomes something that you no longer define yourself by. The events didn't change in the past. You can't change the past. But how you view the events, and for some people it actually becomes the impetus for them doing something in their lives that becomes a very great part of their lives, contributing to others, or writing a book about their experiences, or raising a child and allowing that child to have a different experience, or many different ways that we contribute. What our bad experience turns into good. And essentially, in Buddhism, we view that as literally changing poison into medicine, or changing. It's like you change the past, because if you hadn't had that negative event, you might not have gone on to become the person that you are. So therefore, you look back on the negative event actually and change it into a positive event. And that's called lessening karmic retribution. So even the people who doled out abuse to you in the past, at some point you may get to the point of thanking them, internally. You may still hold them responsible for what they did. There's no question about that. But you may essentially look back and say, thank you for giving me that wound, which then therefore caused me to grow, to seek Buddhism, to seek a higher plane, and to get to another level. So that's literally another way of changing karma. And, in terms of my own experience, I've been practicing this for, it'll be 19 years soon. And there are so many things that have happened. I mean, it's hard to say what is the most important thing that's happened to me. Certainly having Diana in my life, I think more people practice Buddhism because they want to find a partner, or they want to work out their love problems. But nobody admits it, but that's really the true reason. Oh, I want to seek a higher plane. Gosh, I hope I get a boyfriend, or it's, that's why I love it that I grew up in a religion. My father was a Lutheran minister, and I practiced Lutheranism very hard up until around the time I came out as a teenager. And then I said, well, I don't think I can put 100% into something where I may also be rejected or be told that it's not okay the way I am. So I kind of went looking for something else, or formulated my own version of spirituality. And yet my relationships didn't really get better. So, I think that manifesting a person with whom I can practice my spiritual practice, someone who feels very similarly to me about a lot of values and honesty and integrity and things like that. And so I think that is certainly one of my biggest treasures, is to have Diana. And the things like the house and the Castro at one time seemed like huge benefits, and now they just seem, so small in comparison with happiness in life. And recently I had a very, very bad health scare, and became very ill on the 1st of August and was rushed to the hospital, and went through a battery of tests, and I couldn't control my motor coordination, and I had such bad vertigo. I couldn't sit up, I couldn't open my eyes, couldn't stop vomiting. And we actually thought I was having a stroke, and they said, no, you weren't having a stroke, and they didn't know what it was. And so I had to relearn walking and using my eyes and being able to, get along, get around. And during the course of this time, I really had a lot of, I think instantaneously, my Buddhist practice, 19 years of Buddhist practice were right there at that pinpoint moment when I was in the hospital and I didn't know if I was going to live or die. Everything that I had done, all the causes I had made, in the past 2 decades, just simply were right there for me. So that there was no worry in my life at all at that moment about, even if I died, I still didn't have a sense of any kind of worry. And it wasn't a blissful kind of, oh, well, it's okay if I die. It wasn't that. It was, no, I have a purpose. I need to continue living. I felt my life force, essentially. If you could accumulate 19 years of life force and use it at a crucial moment when you needed it, that's essentially what I felt like I could do. And so all of this life energy, this life force came together at that moment, I think, to help me survive and to help me, get through this period of time. And at that moment also it became, brilliantly clear for me that all the material things really were not what mattered. And that the people in my life and the purpose of my life was so much more vast, and I felt as though I had a little insight into how vast each one of our lives, is in terms of how we affect humanity and each other, and what intense of a purpose that it's no coincidence that we're formulated and we become life and we have consciousness and we can choose these paths. So I've been on this course of recovery, kind of not knowing what was going on for some time, and about a little over a month ago, I had more tests done. And when we went back in to see the doctor, he wouldn't tell us what was wrong, but he wouldn't look us in the eye either. He kept turning his back to us and saying, well, I've got to get more tests. And so, but he said there was something, but he wasn't going to be specific. So Diana and I went home and started chanting, and my inclination from my background was to just close up and not tell anybody that I was really worried. And I was able to speak with someone who we really admire, who's practiced for a long time in this faith, and she said, tell everybody so they can chant, they can pray for you, everybody, just tell everybody you know. So Diana got on the internet. I think she had a couple thousand people around the world chanting for me during that time, saying, we really are afraid that there's something, serious, and we really want you all to add Nancy to your prayers. So I really felt it. I could just literally feel, things going on in my head. And we went back for more tests. I had more tests 3 weeks later, and I had CAT scans. And when I came back into the doctor was almost skipping into the room, and he says, the CAT scans are clear. And we said, great, so what was there? And he said, well, we saw a tumor. I saw a tumor in your brain, 3 weeks prior to that on the MRI. And they had taken it from various angles and whatever, and he said that, he just, I'm sure he didn't want to say anything because he doesn't believe in the power of a person healing themselves, but I felt like, he shared in our win, but also these thousands of people who contributed by their prayers shared as well. And I really look forward to the time when you can go to the doctor, they'll tell you exactly what's wrong with you, and then tell you, you better use all of your abilities and your forces and help us so that you can heal. And then when you heal, then they can say, congratulations, you healed yourself, But I really feel that this came not out of a sense that, just chanting cures tumors. That's not the news headline I want to come out of this. What I want is for people people around me to be infected by this feeling that life is so important, and we can summon up strength from places that we didn't even know we had it at the crucial moment. And that if we each really value our lives to the utmost when we're healthy and when we're able to make these causes, then at the moment when you would be potentially most discouraged, you don't even have to worry. It's like literally the Buddhism says it's like 1,000 Buddhas come and lift you up in the air. And it's not angels taking you to heaven, it's Buddhas coming and infusing, your life with this kind of charge, this energy to go to the next level. And so I feel like this is both a conspicuous and an inconspicuous benefit. I really feel as though I've extended my life, and I've also deepened my faith and deepened my life energy.
Thanks. Just one more thing about that, and then we can open it up to some questions, is when we don't chant for benefit per se. I mean, we're not, some of us are benefit hogs, but anyway, go out and chant, I want this, I want that. But ultimately, when we chant, we really have in mind a determination that we see the outcome that we want, or that we, it's not like, oh Buddha, give me this, oh Gohonzon, give me that. It's really, I determine that the outcome to this experience will be positive. I determine that I will overcome my suffering. She could have overcome her suffering from her illness and still died from it. And the idea of, this is not, the idea is that Nam-myoho Renge Kyo isn't magic, but rather it pulls something out of us that, like Nancy says, this power from within that we never knew possible, that we've forgotten somehow. In Buddhism, we always talk about awakening to the truth that is within us. It's not a matter of, practicing forever and then realizing some benefit in another life. It's opening it up now. I have a bunch of little cards also that all say the same thing, and it's called the Spirit of Soka, which is basically saying the spirit of value creation or creating value. And it says, a change in our determination first produces a change in the inner reaches of our life. It enables us to manifest qualities of excellent health, abundant strength, and boundless wisdom. A life that has been transformed in this way will lead others in the direction of happiness and be committed to vanquishing evil. And by evil, we mean things, the negative force of life, not necessarily like evil, like devil, evil, whatever. So anyway, please feel free. I think they're probably enough for everybody if you want. We make little cards like this and put them on our altar and read them and feel encouraged. So with that, I'd like to open it up and see if people have questions for a couple of minutes. We're okay on time?
Yeah, we have a couple minutes, and if there are more than a couple of questions, will you guys hang around?
Sure.
And answer them?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, you first, and then you.
Well, first about autonomy and self-actualization and realizing yourself and taking responsibility is really appealing. I can see the energy and the results. And realize, how does that reconcile with some of the basic Buddhist tenets of suffering arising from desire? Because I've heard things I want.
Right.
Throughout, and I know there must be some reconciliation. What is the basis of that? And the second part of that is I know that in my life and things I've wanted, I've discovered later that they weren't
Good for you.
satisfying or they weren't good for me, or
Right.
I was lucky that I didn't get what I
Right.
wanted. And so how are you sure?
Well, let me start with the first question, then you answer the second part of the question. Okay, I'm going to tell her what to do.
Give me the hard part.
Okay. Well, in this thing talking about benefits, what Nichiren said was, contrary to other forms of Buddhism that I'm familiar with, which is that attachment to things or desire is the cause of suffering. He said it's true, but it's impossible to rid yourself of attachments because human beings are attached to things and to desires. They have wants, they have desires. If we weren't attached, we would be horrible parents, for example. He said use your attachment to achieve something deeper. And he's trying to rid yourself of an attachment is antithetical to being human. Human beings are constructed in a way to want things and want relationships and want stuff, but his idea was to use it for a greater purpose, that you in the process of realizing your earthly desires, whatever realizing may mean, you attain enlightenment because you're polishing the part of you that prevents you from having them. But it also, the more you practice Buddhism, this deeper thing comes out of you. So that's what I meant by saying this was an expedient means to something deeper. He says in one of his writings, earthly desires are enlightenment. It wasn't that the earthly desires are the enlightened part, but the process of attaining those things can be enlightened or be a process for becoming enlightened. I'm trying to give an example. You're looking at me like I'm...
Well, I know people who have actually come into this religion by chanting for drugs. Because they came to a Buddhist meeting and somebody said you can chant for anything you want. They said, fine, I'm going to chant for drugs. And one person I know actually was hitchhiking and chanting. And she got picked up by this guy who he said, look in the back seat, he had a bag of drugs. He said, have as much as you want. She was like, whoa, does this Nam-myoho Renge Kyo work or what? So what ended up happening was she and her boyfriend had as much drugs as they wanted for the next few days, and they completely lost their desire for drugs. Now I know this doesn't happen to everybody because I've been to lots of 12-step meetings, but anyway, in any case, the desire for drugs got them to chant. Chanting ultimately opened up their own feeling that their life was too valuable to throw it away by having drugs. So in a sense, their earthly desire for drugs led them to enlightenment, and they've continued practicing Buddhism for 30 years, and established a very happy life, drug-free life. But their desire for drugs itself was not enlightenment. But the other thing I want to say was Shakyamuni himself went, and tried to rid himself of all desire. And he said he ultimately was able to not rid himself of the desire to sleep and the desire to go to the bathroom, the desire for water. There were certain desires that no matter how hard he meditated, and he, spent 31 days or something up on Eagle Peak. Now through that process, he realized his own enlightenment, but he didn't realize when he realized his enlightenment, he didn't say, this is what everybody should do. They should come up here and emaciate themselves to the verge of death, and then they'll become enlightened. In fact, at that moment, he said, I realized that this process, led me to these realizations, but that it was even my desire for enlightenment that led me to pursue that process. So it is literally impossible to eliminate desire from the process of spirituality. I mean, the Catholic Church is certainly suffering over that right now, too. They're trying to tell people that you are more spiritual if you rid yourself of desire. And yet people end up acting in ways that we perceive as evil as a reaction of trying to cut off their own desire. And come to find out that their reason for asking priests not to marry or be sexual didn't even have anything to do with spirituality. It had to do with the property laws in England in the 5th century. So, it really had nothing to do with spirituality to start with. So I think there's a lot of things in our spiritual practices that it's good to question. I think there's a part of Buddhism that came out of Shakyamuni's initial belief that ridding yourself of desires would then lead to enlightenment, because many of our desires do cause us to suffer. When you fall in love, falling in love is the best feeling in the world. Everybody wants it, right? But what causes you more pain than falling in love? Does that stop people from falling in love? It doesn't seem to be working. I mean, that the logic of it, because there are goodies in it, and there are goodies that bring out parts of us that we want to bring out. We just don't want to have the suffering part. So Nichiren Daishonin basically says that what Shakyamuni meant is that we should use our desires for the best possible good, and eliminate. He even says literally, we're going to hand this out to you. He says, if you wish to free yourselves from the suffering of birth and death, which are two things that no one can escape, you have endured since time without beginning, and to attain without fail unsurpassed enlightenment in this lifetime, you must perceive the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings. This truth is Myoho Renge Kyo. Chanting Myoho Renge Kyo will therefore enable you to grasp the mystic truth innate in all life.
Let me interrupt and say that, and suggest that we bring the meeting formally to a close, and then those who want to stay in here and continue the question and answers, we can do that instead of going, and those who want to socialize can go outside, so there isn't too much of a rhubarb, because there's some energy left, I think, to continue this, but I know that some people have to leave, and I want to honor that too.
Great.
So can you just hold for a second and proceed with the formal closing of the meeting. Are there any announcements?
I just want to remind people that this Thursday, Thanksgiving, the gay Buddhists are having a Thanksgiving. It will be at my house in Berkeley. Everybody is welcome, and it's a potluck, and there's flyers on the table with directions. It's 2 o'clock this Thursday.
That's great. Were you signaling something to me?
No, I was just making the point that I think
some other people have questions. Yeah. So that's good. So we'll stay for more questions. the house announcements are the Donoval is out there. We ask that people contribute $5 if you can, more if you can, less if you can. Also, this is our fundraising time. We're asking people at this particular time to make an extra donation because it's a fundraising time, and we really rely on the fundraising team, fundraising for our survival. The donna that we get at the meetings, even as generous as it's been in the last year, doesn't make costs. It's only through the fundraising that we are able to continue with the newsletter, the rent, the Feeding the Homeless project, probably some other expenses. Speakers, yeah. So, I mean, we give modest donna to the speakers. So, keep that in mind. I've been just hosed by the stock market. I've lost 50% of my savings, and I have to really struggle to continue to contribute and not to contract and draw up, and pull in. So I know it's a tough time for everybody, but do what you can, and it will be appreciated. There's refreshments out there. Please wash your teacups when you're through. After we finish the discussion in here, please help by bringing chairs and pillows back to their place. And is there anything else I forgot? I'm sorry.
I have an announcement.
Yeah, okay, sure.
I just want to let everyone know, if you don't already know, the Metropolitan Community Church in Castro, which is a queer Christian church, has just opened up their vision for interfaith ministry, and they've started a new Buddhist ministry there. And so I hope that you can spread the word, because I think that for a Christian church to do this is really rare and unprecedented. And I think, of course, the queer community would be the one doing this.
Of course.
And I hope you can try to support them in this and tell them you're thankful, even if you don't attend any of their Buddhist stuff, but that you're thankful for that to happen. In November, the Buddhist series brought in about 100 people, about 60 to 80 each Monday night. And they're doing another series in December on Living Buddha, Living Christ on Monday nights as well. And so just want to let you know that Buddhist spirituality is spreading in many different ways.
We've been closing now in a circle holding hands, so let's do that. Do you have a closing that you can say?
We could chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo 3 times together, which is what we like to do.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
But we're going to do it in the circle holding
Yeah, I know. We're going to ring the bell, though.
Okay.
Have to ring the bell.
Okay.
Have to have a bell. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Thank you.
That's good buzz
Yeah.
with that.
Are there people here who want to stay and talk, discuss? You can. So please do. I have to go outside and make the refreshment. I'll be back.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.